Hello there. Welcome to episode number 291 of Goulet Q&A, where fountain pens are still a thing. I'm Brian Goulet here from Goulet Pens, and I'm here to share this meticulously slapdash and succinctly rambling video where I take your fountain pen, ink, and paper questions and answer them as only someone who's devoted an unreasonable amount of their life to fountain pens could. In this episode, I'm coming fresh off a week off with Thanksgiving and all that, so I'm going to try to make up for it. Not really make up for it. I'm going to try to give you something worth watching today. But I'm going to be talking about satisfying affordable pens for newbies, great first stub nibs, what to do when using your very first pen, comparing different TWSBI grips, what the heck is up with nib size measurements and can they be better? And then best default nib size for daily use. And then black-coated versus uncoated nibs, which ones are better? And then, of course, I have some Thanksgiving adventures and some personal stuff to share. So it should be pretty good. I got some new stuff to talk about. It should be nice and fun. So hopefully enjoy the week off from having to see my face, unless you chose to by watching any of the other thousands of videos that are out there. But anyway, let's start off with some feedback, shall we? All right, first bit of feedback. Got lots of Thanksgiving well wishes. Thank you all. Dave Goodridge, TX Piper, Santa Joy, Toots 4, Marianne Mize, Fossil Imprint, Panda Tube. Thank you all. Just appreciate all the well wishes. Much appreciated. I do read these comments from time to time. Got some feedback here from East Wind. Said, thank you for answering my question. I love my sturdy brass pens. After my own Christmas rush is over, polishing them is going to be my relaxing Zen project. That's what I talked about in the last episode, was polishing brass pens. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the team. So thank you. And then CPC Freak immediately posted, no, we love the patina and it tells a story. So, to each their own in terms of polishing your metal pens. I can see both sides of it. I generally tend to leave mine to patina, because you can always polish them to make them look brand new. But the patina is something that just kind of happens naturally, and it looks a little different from pen to pen. It makes it a little more unique. So I can see going both ways with it. I tend to leave mine unpolished, but, I don't judge anybody for polishing theirs, of course. And then Chris MD has a comment here. Thanks, Brian, for all the info. I also own a business with my wife, and we still tighten up chair bolts, unclog toilets, check on the boiler, and all the little tasks that don't fall under someone's job description. Like us, your CEO, chief cook, and bottle washer. That's right. We really appreciate you guys over all these years. You help make so many people's lives better. I refuse to buy on Amazon and support small businesses for these products. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do. I will say, myself being a small business owner, I think about that a whole lot more. I really avoid Amazon if any other option is available. I'm not a big fan. And again, I don't judge anybody who does, but because that's most everybody. But it really does make a difference, the small business versus big business kind of a thing. And I don't know, being on the retail side of things, in the small business space, it's a lot of work. And I appreciate what goes into it. It's a lot of care, a lot of attention for those who really care, and you can tell. But anyway, so yeah, appreciate the support from one business owner to another. Appreciate that. I got a couple company updates here because we are coming up on the holidays. All right, well, we were off a little bit. We were closed for Thanksgiving Day. A lot of us, are seeing family and stuff like that around the holidays. So we had various other team members that were kind of off. But you have Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, whatever that holidayness has kind of morphed into over the years. It's something that's not insignificant for us in terms of our volume and busyness. So want to get y'all your pens that you're really excited about. So we are working hard, or I guess at this point, by the time this is published, we will have worked hard to catch up with that, our fulfillment team especially. Really, this is like game time for all of us. So we cleared the schedule and made all that happen and are focusing on that. So hopefully we should not see any delays in our shipping at all. But of course, once it's in the carrier's hands, who knows? But we're working hard to try and stay on top of that. So our team will be very focused in the next few weeks. This is a short holiday season. I mean, Christmas is going to be here before we know it. So be ready for that. Thanksgiving was very late this year. And then just want to give you a little bit of a heads up in terms of video schedule. So we are going to be doing a Q&A for the next 3 weeks. So I was just off last week. I'm going to have 3 weeks, and then I'm going to be off for 2 weeks, Christmas and New Year's. So just the holidays fall in the middle of the week, messes up my whole schedule. We're going to have family visiting and all this kind of stuff. So it's going to get a little bit wacky. And I just decided, you know what, we'll give you all a break from me. So we're going to have, we won't really, because I've scheduled other videos to go out at that time, but we won't have a Q&A anyway. So that'll be coming. We're going to have, so the week of the 6th, 13th, and 20th, the week of 6th, that's today when I'm publishing this. But then we're going to have those ones published. And then after that, we will not, but I will be doing a hottest pens of the year and hottest inks of the year that I'll publish in place of the Q&A at the end of the year. So you will have some interesting stuff to watch there. It's always fun. I've done that for many years. I think the ink, I've done 6 of them now, and these will be the 8th hottest pens of the year. So it's been a thing for a while. And then wanted to give you some information on shipping deadlines. Super boring stuff, I know, but if you're in shopping mode, just be aware of that. If you're in domestic US market here, that's where we're located. Standard economy shipping deadline is December 15th. There's no guaranteed delivery date for standard economy, but just as a general rule. And then FedEx 2-day is going to be the 19th, and FedEx overnight is the 22nd. So just have those dates in mind. We have them up on the website too. International, the date's already passed for standard shipping, just because it takes longer. And then FedEx Economy is the December 14th, and FedEx Priority is December 17th. So be aware of those dates if you are looking to shop, because it takes time for things to get delivered. And I don't know what the situation is with most shipping carriers this year. I know it's been some historic years in the last several with COVID and all that. I think most of that's kind of worked out at this point. I think we're not anticipating anything too crazy in terms of delays and transit and all that this year, except for Canada, because Canada Post, I think, is still on strike. It gets a little crazy, but anyway, that's the thing. So yeah, if you're Canada, you should definitely order FedEx. Yeah, that's it for the update stuff. So yeah, let's talk about some new stuff, because there's kind of a lot of it. All right, I'm not going to mention every new product that we have. I'm talking about the new Sailor Silence colors, the Esterbrook Jurassic Special Edition with that Fude nib too, the Conklin 1898 special ones, and then the Benu Christmas pen, and pens that I wanted to mention. Again, this gets to be a crazy time of year, because by the time from recording this to publishing it, I don't know what might have sold out or whatever. So I want to mention some things. If it has sold out by the time this publishes, I am deeply sorry. But just in case it hasn't, Retro 51 has their Christmas Light Express pen. This is a Lionel Train pen. Any model train fans out there? Very limited. I don't know how many that we have. I don't know how many we're going to... I have no idea what the interest is for these pens, but be aware that that's a thing, or has been a thing if it's gone already. We have a super small amount of Franklin Christoph Model 31 Boundless Horizon. We had some delays on materials and stuff like that. So it's a limited batch. It's not a full batch. I think we're supposed to get more, but that's kind of up in the air. It's not going to be for a while. So we were like, well, let's go ahead and launch what we have. Very limited. Go check it out. I'm not going to hype it up too much, because it may not be around long. And then big fancy Pelican pen, the Toledo M910. So this is essentially an M800 with an engraved sterling silver sleeve on it. Very cool looking, definitely heavier. That sterling adds a lot of weight to it. Very fancy. This is more of like a collector kind of a piece, but it looks really nice. It's all hand done by a jeweler. So looks really interesting. So, it's $2,000. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, but it is kind of neat, and you don't see these every day. So at least check it out. Look at that thing, because it's beautiful. And we got a new ink, Ferris Wheel Press Tunes of Tinseltown. So this is a deep teal with a duochrome silver and gold. So that's kind of neat. All those things are new. You can check out the new arrivals or the coming soon stuff on our site. We're going to have some other things too. There's a TWSBI that just got announced. The Amazon, I don't remember the name of it. It's very, very new. Yeah, go check it out. Amazonite, I believe it's called. Very neat. It's like a, what's it called? Marbled kind of a finished. Something new for TWSBI. So yeah, that's coming. That'll be neat. All right, that's it for new stuff. Let's go ahead and answer some questions, shall we? All right, Follow Your Brush says, I recently allowed my granddaughter, age 12, to try all my pens during her recent visits. Interestingly, she could instinctively tell a difference in the smoothness and feel of different pens. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I didn't mention the cost, But don't you know it, she said the more expensive ones were so satisfying. I want to get her one for Christmas. What pen would you recommend that has that satisfying feel that is still reasonably priced? I think a really inexpensive one she will know. Oh, gosh. This resonates with me because I have a 12-year-old daughter, soon to be 13. And very perceptive. These children can be. It is really interesting. Like we have a lot of like nerve endings and stuff like that. A lot of sensitivity in our fingertips and our sense of touch. I mean, it's obviously very important, touching things. But yeah, it's you can pick up on a lot. So even like they may not be able to explain, like a 12-year-old may not be able to explain why something is more satisfying, but they can tell what they like and what they don't like. So I would say 12 is a pretty good age, right? Like it depends on the kid, obviously. I don't know your granddaughter. You can use your judgments. But it's of the age. If you're like 9, 10, it's like, you may not want to get too nice of a pen. I feel like 12, the child can be somewhat more responsible. You can get them maybe a slightly nicer pen and not have to worry about it like just getting lost or broken immediately. Obviously, it depends on the kid, but I wouldn't go too nice because they're still going to be maybe taking it to school, and there's a lot of other kids who may not be as cognizant of what's going on and could still get lost, broken, stolen, whatever. So I don't know. Use your best judgment. Have a budget in mind, but I would say, I'm going to just really kind of have to guess here because I don't know what pens your granddaughter used. So I don't know what kind of a range of pens that she experienced. I'm going to just probably assume some of the ones she thought were more satisfying were gold nib pens, and maybe not the steel ones. That is part of what many people think makes pens feel more satisfying is when there's a little bit of give to the nib, a little bit of bounce to them, which is more common on gold nibs, right? It's not a hard, fast rule. There are some gold nibs that are stiffer that don't necessarily feel, any different than a steel nib per se. But even still, gold nibs, generally speaking, have a little more handwork done, a little more attention. So, they may be, a little more focus on the smoothness and alignment and these types of things. Really, all pens should be right pretty good, but, realistically, not all pens are created equal. So I would say there's a couple things that you can look at. I would probably not encourage you to go gold nib pen, especially if it's your granddaughter's first pen. That just feels like a big investment to me. Maybe give it a trial run on a slightly less expensive pen first, see how she does with it. Then as she, gets more into it, she can get more of that prove that responsibility kind of thing. So things that I like, this is honestly not just for a 12-year-old, but really for most people who haven't had a lot of experience with fountain pens. I tend to go to a TWSBI Eco as a go-to pen because for me, it's a really good bang for the buck. You're not getting that, bounciness with the nib. It's going to be a pretty stiff stainless steel nib. But if you go with like a medium or a broad nib especially, it's going to be pretty smooth. And it's going to feel definitely better than probably any other rollerball or ballpoint pen they've ever used before. So it's still a really good intro to fountain pens. Yes, you can get fancier and stuff than that, but it's a really good looking pen. It's got a nice big ink window on it, so it's easy to tell when it's low on ink. That is one thing, especially with kids or anyone new to it. They're just not thinking about refilling the pen very often. So if you have a pen that you can't see the ink level, it's easy for the pen to start to dry out or run out. And then they will like press down harder on the nib to like make more ink come out when there may not be more ink in the pen. They can spring the tines. They can maybe cause some damage and stuff like that inadvertently just because they don't know. But also it's just kind of cool to see the ink inside the pen. So, for $33, Eco it's like the packaging looks really good. To me, it's just a really solid go-to pen. And there's some interesting color options too. You've got, the Amazonite that I kind of mentioned a minute ago. That one looks pretty cool. Cerulean, transparent purple or yellow. There's just lots of fun colors of Ecos that you can go with. Of course, you can go with any other, kind of TWSBI as well is a pretty good kind of starter brand like that. I think the Diplomat Magnum is pretty cool. If you do want sort of that bouncier nib feel, that's a steel nib that has a bouncy spring to it, which is pretty cool. So that could be an option. The prismatic purple, that's an exclusive color that we have. It's by far our most popular color, and it looks really cool. I don't care who you are. It's just a cool looking color. It's got kind of that iridescent look. So that could be a good option. That's even less expensive than the TWSBI. It's hard to go wrong with a Safari, Lamy Safari or All-Star. Those are really good. The Lamy All-Star Harry Potters, don't know, 12-year-old daughter, there's a not insignificant chance she knows Harry Potter or has heard of Harry Potter. She is a Harry Potter fan. I'm sure that would go over well. Just find out what house she likes and go with that. I would be thinking about, these are all good options. You're all steel nibs, but they're all solid pens, good performers. I would feel very confident gifting any one of those. I would, for a kid, who's kind of just getting into it, they're not going to be as particular necessarily about like their handwriting size and the notebooks they choose to use and that type of stuff. Maybe they are, but I would be more inclined to go with like a medium or a broad nib, just to have a smoother nib that is just going to be a little more forgiving. So I would say that's a good nib choice to go with any of these pens. But it's totally up to you. Fine is usually what I recommend for most new people into fountain pens. And I got a later question about that actually. But I would say that, going with a slightly broader one that's going to feel smoother is a good intro for that like satisfying feel. Again, I'm just assuming based on what you inferred. And then also coupling with that, maybe get a fun ink or maybe a set of ink samples, right? So that's a huge part of the fun. For getting into fountain pens, especially for kids, they can get colors to match their whatever show or franchise or whatever that they're into, whatever color they like. If they want to match their bag, their whatever sweater or something, who knows? They can have fun with that. Just don't forget the converters. So some of these pens, they're cartridge converter pens. The Lamys don't come with converters. You just don't forget to include those if you do want to go like the bottle or the sample route. So there you go. Hopefully those are some good options. I am going to have a little bit leaning in the Q&A for the next couple of weeks towards gift things and towards, a lot of y'all asking questions like that and towards like new pen users and stuff like that, because this is the time of year when a lot of people are trying out pens for the first time and getting pen-abled by their, pen fan, family members or friends. So, forgive me if it seems like I'm answering maybe some more basic questions and stuff like that. This is a really important part of this whole hobby, is making sure that we are passing it on to the next generation. So I'm going to lean into that a little bit for the next couple of weeks. So there you go. Hopefully that helps you out. All right, next one, Fish Burglar. What a funny handle. Want to try a stub nib. Recommendations for stub nib for line variation. Well, that's kind of the point of stub nibs, is you're going to get line variation. So, pretty much any stub nib that you get, you're going to get some line variation. That's by design. Excuse me. I tend towards less expensive stub nibs as a first stub nib. You can get, more expensive gold stub nibs and stuff like that. And they are nice for sure, but they're not for everybody. Not everybody is into stubs. It's not the most significant, nib size that people are getting into. So I would not just financially invest a whole ton into a stub nib pen if you have not already used stubs and know that you really like writing with them. So that was my experience. I used, some, less expensive Lamys and Pelicans when I first got into it. Really proved to myself, like, I really like stub nibs. And so then I, invested in some nicer stubs and all that. But honestly, for most of my stubs, I still tend to lean on the less expensive side. So I don't know if this is a first stub nib. I'm kind of making some assumptions here based on your question. So I'm going to go a little more on like, the ease into it kind of route with my recommendations. So if you already have a pen that takes a number 6 nib, we sell Goulet number 6 nibs. It's just the nib itself. So you got to have the feed and housing and all that already, but if you have like an Edison pen, or if you have Jinhao or some other things like that, it's not as many number 6 nibs as, pens that there used to be, but we do have our nibs that you can put on a number of those pens, and you can get just a 1.1 stub. That's what I would recommend. You can get, usually more than a 1.1, like a 1.5 or even a 1.9, like in Lami's case. Those are pretty wide. You're not going to really be able to use those on regular line width paper. Maybe you can squeeze a 1.5 millimeter stub into like an 8 millimeter ruling, like a wide ruling. But if you're going like a 7 millimeter college ruling type of thing or finer than that, like a 5 millimeter dot grid or something, that 1.5, you're going to have to double up the lines. You're not going to be able to fit it on one line. So just be aware of that. You will get a more dramatic line variation the wider you go with the stub. But I find that a real nice sweet spot for stubs tends to be in the 1 or 1.1 millimeter line width. There are some specialty nib grinds you can go even a little thinner than that, but not on starter pens really. You're either looking at a 1.0 or a 1.1. And those are a good spot to begin with. You'll get a really good taste for stubs. There's still good line variation on those. Lami's a great one. If you already have a Lamy pen, you can get just the 1.1 nib. It doesn't come standard on a lot of pens. The Joy mostly, I think. I'm trying to think if there's others that the steel, stub nibs will come on. It's mostly you got to get a spare stub nib. So if you already have a Lamy pen, great. You just get the nib and you put it on the pen and you go on your merry way. That's a really, really easy way to get into stubs. And Lamy's got a really decent 1.1 stub. Or if you wanted to get, a 1.5, 1.9, you can get a variety of them for, get all three of those for, about the cost of a decent pen. And you can, try out different nib sizes if you want. That was my experience when I first got into fountain pens. I really had no idea. I'd never used stubs. I knew no one that knew fountain pens. I was really having to figure it all out for myself. And I would read stuff online. I would see writing samples online, but it's really hard to tell what it actually looks like. And it feels different in your own hand and you're going to have your own style to it. So for me, I found a lot of benefit to just trying a lot of different things. It definitely helps if you have somebody else that that's into fountain pens and they have pens already that you can try. That really cuts down on the investment into and the time and all that of getting it all yourself. But I don't know, me, I'm an acquirer and I just was okay getting, a variety of different things. It's kind of how I get into all my hobbies and stuff. I just like to try the widest range of experiences that I can within it. And then I narrow down what I really like from there. So yeah, that's a really good way to go about that is with the really any Lamy pen, because you can swap out those nibs except for the 2000. You can get any other pens, got the removable nibs. It's pretty easy. And then this is going to be an odd one, but the Pilot Parallel. So it's a very inexpensive pen. You're looking, less than $15. And it comes with a usable converter. It's really going to show off how the line variation works. Now, the thinnest one is a 1.5 millimeter. So this is a little bit more of an ornamental kind of pen, more for calligraphy, stuff like that. If you wanted to sign an envelope or do a signature or something like that, something larger, these are great pens for that. And you can get varying widths from 1.5 millimeter up to 6 millimeter, which is massive. So you can do some really cool stuff with those. If you are interested in doing any type of hand lettering or anything like that, you can get a set of those or get a couple different line widths of parallels for a pretty insignificant investment. Maybe not insignificant, for a pretty reasonable investment. You can get a good variety of different size stub nibs, and they're actually really decent pens. They're a little weird. I don't like the long ends on them personally. I mean, that's just like what calligraphy pens tend to get designed to look like, to look like pen holders for dip nibs and stuff like that. They kind of carry that design over into the pens. I don't like it because then it's like, it doesn't fit in most of my pen cases and it's kind of weird to carry around. But anyway, it is what it is. It's not a big deal. It's pretty reasonably priced pen. So I like that one a lot, but definitely the Parallel is an easy recommend, I think, for anyone looking to try a stub just as a concept. It's not going to be the stub you're probably going to want to carry around all the time. But it is pretty cheap. So, yeah, there you go. So those are some recommendations. I think that's a good place to start. All right, next up, Acute 360 has more of a starter pen question here. I'm getting my first proper fountain pen for my birthday next month. Happy birthday. I previously only had a cheap one from a local shop. I'm going to get the Lamy Safari. What should I do first? Well, that is a very general question. I'm assuming what should you do? Like you're handed the pen, now what? Obviously you can do whatever you want with it. But if you already know the pen you're getting, like in this case, the Safari, and you haven't gotten it yet, first thing would be to consider what nib size you want. So chances are if you have one just from a local shop, it may have something like, thin, medium, bold, or something like that. It may not even have a designation that lines up with what they typically use for fountain pens, or it may just be generic. It may not say anything at all. Probably, if it's just a default, I had to assume it would be a medium nib. That tends to be what they throw on most everything just by default. Unless it's like some kind of calligraphy pen or something, you get all types when you see just like generic pens you get from, cheaper stores. I would say a fine or a medium is going to be a good choice for a first nib. Fine is going to be a little more versatile in case you have really absorbent paper or, a thinner line width, it's just a little more versatile. You can always write bigger, with a thinner nib, but you can't always write smaller and have it still be legible if the nib size is too big. Medium is still pretty good to go. It can get a little tight on a 5mm ruling, like a graph or a dot grid. It'll do just fine on a 7mm, which is kind of standard. 7 to 8mm is what most lined ruling is. So those would be the first things to consider: fine or medium nib, or whatever nib size you want. But I would go with one of those probably if you don't know any different. Get a converter. Get a converter with your pen, because Lamis do not come with converters. Maybe if you're just like, nope, I only want to use cartridges. I don't really care about trying a lot of different inks. I just want a pen that writes. Cool, you can get cartridges. Lamy makes proprietary cartridges, so there are not an enormous number of color options, but they do have different colors of cartridges. They're pretty good size cartridges too, so you don't have to like refill them constantly, but it is something you have to account for, and you're gonna have to obviously replenish those. And Lamy is everywhere in Europe, but most brick and mortar stores are probably not gonna be carrying Lamy cartridges. Maybe some would, but I don't know the last time I saw any around where I am in Central Virginia here. You'd have to go to more of a specialty store or get them online. I know a place you can get those. But still, just like, part of the experience getting into fountain pens is playing with the ink. You can always get a converter later, but it's $6. Go ahead and just pick one up. Is what I would recommend for your Lamy. Let's see here. So first time using the pen, say you got all the stuff that you need. With most pens, you want to like unbox it, make sure everything looks okay. It's not cracked, it's not damaged, anything like that. That's really not common with Lamy, and there's not a lot of elaborate packaging to go with the Safari. So let's just assume you got it out of the box. Now, first thing is with your Lamy pen, at least, they always test it with blue ink. And there's a little bit of like dried ink that's left on the feed. That's just standard fare for Lamy. They've been doing that for decades. So it's always a good idea, especially with a Lamy pen, to just go ahead and flush it with clean water. Again, this is the thing where having a converter is more helpful to do that. Just rinsing it, under the tap or whatever is not really going to do a lot. It's really ideal to use either like a bulb syringe or a converter to flush water actually through the pen. Gets it really clean. I've tried it both ways. I've also just grabbed a new Lamy, even with the ink that's kind of left on there, and just inked it up with whatever the heck I felt like and written with it. It didn't, ruin my pen. It didn't change much of anything. I guess if you're using it with like a really pale yellow ink, some of that blue might mix in there and you'd be like, why is my ink green? Initially, and then it'll work itself through. So, just be aware that that's a thing with your Lamy pen. It's a good standard practice to just rinse out any new pen that you get with clean water. Just because, there could be ink that's been tested in there, maybe didn't get cleaned all the way. There could be, just like manufacturing oils or little particles or something left in the feed. There's all kinds of stuff that could happen just from the manufacturing and assembly process. Most of the time, you're not going to have a problem. I often like to just ink up my pen straight out of the box, just so I can try and get some examples and get some experience myself for what problems people might have with a pen fresh out of the box. But I run into that actually pretty rarely. Most of the time, it's perfectly fine. But standard practice, good idea to rinse out your pen first. After that, you flush it with clean water, make sure you expel all the water out. And then it's a good idea to take like a piece of paper towel or like a terry cloth towel or something like that and just blot the nib. after you flush all the water out to actually suck up the water out of the feed before you ink it for the first time. That is one thing. People newer to fountain pens, maybe it's not from the initial use, but after the first time they clean a pen, there's still like all kinds of water left up in there. And then they go to fill the pen with ink, and either it dilutes the ink that's in there and they're like, why is this color so much weaker? Or, it fills, but then as it starts to write, it's still mostly water in the feed, and it like looks really, really pale until it works itself through and then darkens up. So happens to the best of us. Everybody's experienced that at some point. But just be aware that happens. If you blot the nib with a new pen like that, then that will get all that excess water out of there, and you'll ink it up and basically be ready to go. And then, we do have some other videos that demonstrate this more. I thought about like doing all this hand stuff to show all these things, but we've already recorded all this. If you haven't seen it yet, check out our whole Fountain Pen 101 series. I explain all the terminology, the parts of a pen, cleaning, maintenance, all this stuff. Really good resource there. It's a series of 5 videos, and then there's a whole bunch of others as well. So you can go check those out. It's definitely worth the time checking those out if you're new to fountain pens. And there's another one. We have 5 steps for getting started with a fountain pen. That's like a more specific kind of one, kind of like what you're asking here. We got good stuff. We got lots of, close-up shots showing what's going on. So yeah, do that. And then last but not least, you can reach out to our team here at Goulet Pens. We're a pretty helpful bunch here. We have lots of good resources on our blog and on YouTube videos and stuff, but you can reach out to a human here and we can help you and troubleshoot and stuff like that if you do find that you're just like kind of lost. Really helpful team here, and we love helping people get new into the hobby. So do it all the time. So yeah, there you go. You got lots of options for you. Welcome to the fountain pen world. All right, next one up. Frederick Bruck says, I love ALR grip sections. Talking about the TWSBI 580 ALR. Do you know of any plans at TWSBI to launch a VAC 700 with that grip? That would be one of my grail pens. Or are the grip sections interchangeable between the 580 and the VAC? Then I would simply buy both and do it myself. As far as I know, there are no plans to do a VAC 700 ALR, I guess is what it would be called. VAC 700R ALR? I don't know. Because you have the TWSBI 580, 580 AL, and the 580 ALR. That's the one where you get the textured grip. So I don't know, VAC 700 ALR. Or even a VAC 700 AL for that matter. So you have the 580, you have the 580 AL. I'm going to show you all this stuff. I pulled a whole bunch of TWSBIs. I want to show you the different grips and stuff like that because it's complicated. But I thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of show you with my hands. So I'm going to switch over to that view and we can check them all out. Okay, so here we go. We have the 2 pens in question. This is the VAC 700R. This is the Kyanite Blue, which is relatively new. Looks pretty awesome. And we have the 580 ALR. This is the Caribbean with Onyx. Also pretty new. Also pretty awesome. I'm just really digging the colors that TWSBI's doing recently. Let me show you the 2 grips and why you essentially can't do what it is that you're asking about. So first off, they use different nib sizes. This has a number 6 size nib, and the 580 has a number 5 size nib. If you look at them next to each other, you can tell the difference in the sizes. That doesn't necessarily have to mean that you couldn't swap them. If they made the grips themselves interchangeable, then you could just swap the whole thing, but you can't just pull a nib out and swap it. Like you can do that with some other pens. Generally, if you have pens where the housing is different or the threading in the housing is different, sometimes you can swap just the nib itself, but you cannot do that between these 2 pens because the actual physical nib will not swap in between them. But you're asking about the grip anyway, which really, this is the textured grip. I don't know if you can hear any of that, but some people love the texture like you. Other people hate the texture like my wife, Rachel. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't absolutely love it. I don't mind it though. So I don't know. It's interesting. I probably wouldn't choose it just on my own, but I will not buy the pen because of that. Either way, you like it and that's what matters. So here's the grips on the 2 pens. Now, I will say you can get nib units for the 580. You can get spare nib units. TWSBI offers them. They will not be the textured grips. It's just a standard clear nib unit. It's essentially to be able to get a different nib size, more or less. And then I'm going to see what the options are, because I need to actually refresh myself on them, because they have many different pens and many different options. So TWSBI nibs. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. Yeah, you can get different nib sizes, but it's just a plain clear grip that you can get for the 580. You can also get one for the Mini, the VAC 700R, and the VAC Mini. Now, if you look at the nib housings themselves, just the nib units themselves, you'll see that they look different, and that's what I'm going to show you on these two. So they do disassemble, which is kind of nice. So to swap, what you get when you buy, a nib unit is you get the whole grip and everything, which is fine, but it is not interchangeable between these two pens. Long story short, none of the grips are interchangeable between any of the other pens. Basically, I mean, the 580 AL and the 580 ALR, the body is the same. So you can swap, any of those grips between each other, but you cannot put, a VAC onto this or a VAC Mini or anything like that. And if you look at just how the things are set up, I mean, the threads on them are entirely different. So the way that the 580 is designed is it has what you see more typically with a housing, which is like a black housing that holds the feed and the nib on here. And then it's got a thread at the end. You can see the little filler, the feed channel right there. This is a pretty typical setup that you would have for a nib. I mean, there's the nib unit itself. Look at that. It could be any brand. So they have their own kind of dressing that they put on here for the 580. And that's fine. It's threaded in back here, which threads onto the feed housing. That goes in there. And then essentially the grip is really just like a sleeve that goes on the outside of that housing, right? So pretty simple setup, but it is different than the way the VAC 700 is set up. So the VAC 700, because it's this whole vacuum filling thing, it's got a little bit more going on here. The thread is different. There is still a housing in here, and this is part of why I wanted to show you close up, because this you can't really tell just by looking at pictures on our site. So similar kind of setup, like it's got this little part here, the collar, that, in this case is metal, and it's got some O-rings and stuff, which helps to, keep the grip from getting all kinds of ink up in it when you're, filling it. But it's back here. It's everything back here. Now, it's not vastly different size, but that size does make a difference. It would have to basically be the exact same setup in here to be able to swap those grips. Now, what I haven't tried, I'm actually curious. I don't think this is going to work. Let me see if I can remove the whole housing. I don't think it's going to work because this seems bigger. I mean, it's a bigger nib, so there's no way it's actually going to swap. But just for kicks, I'm going to see if I can actually swap. Whoa. No, there's no way this is going to work. That's not going to fit on there. Yeah, so I can't fit the collar on there. And the VAC 700 collar is going to be way too big for the 580. It's like, whoa. It's like I'm wearing grandpa's suit jacket, That's not going to work. They look similar design, and it is kind of similar, but you really can't interchange anything between these. They're just totally different sizes. So yeah, hope's dashed. Sorry, you're stuck with what you got here. Now, if you get another brand of number 5 nib, yeah, you can do that on here. But again, whoops, getting my parts mixed up. But what you're asking, I keep forgetting your original question. What your question was, is can you put this grip on the VAC 700? The answer is no. I mean, if I try to do that, put the collar back on here, it's not going to be compatible in any way. Like, it doesn't even fit. Doesn't even fit on here at all. It's just not the right size. So, not possible. Hope's dashed. Even if it did kind of fit, the length wouldn't be right, and you would need, these threads on here to fit onto the actual body of the pen. And you see here, like with the 580, it's got threads on here for the cap, but it does not have, threads on the outside here. It's got threads on the inside that matches up to the housing. But this one, it's got threads, not on the housing. I mean, it does, but it's threads really on the grip itself. It's just a totally different setup, totally different size. TWSBI would need to completely redesign, the way that they do these ALs or the ALR in order to make it fit onto a VAC 700. And I just don't know that they're going to do that. That would be cool. I think we would be more likely to see an AL version, the one without the textured thing before seeing the ALR. They've done an AL on the TWSBI Mini and the 580, but never on a VAC version that I've seen. So that would be cool. We'll let that be known in this video here. TWSBI, if you're watching, there is interest, at least from one individual, on that. But yeah. And then just for kicks, I had a couple other pens that I wanted to show you because we do get a lot of questions about TWSBI and the different grips and nibs and all that stuff. So I grabbed some of the more popular ones just so I can show you. This is the Eco. Eco and 580, a little more similar. The Eco does not have a removable grip, so that is impossible to swap. As far as the nib itself, the feed and all that, it's different. It's not, you can just look at it and tell that it's not the same size. Number 5 nib, number 4 nib. So you can swap Eco nibs amongst each other, but 580 and Eco nibs are not compatible with each other, unfortunately. So even if you wanted to swap out just the metal nib itself, I mean, I guess you could force it if you were really trying hard enough, but would not recommend for the life of your pen. Grab some other ones. TWSBI Go. Again, fixed grip on here. It's part of like the body. It's really a different setup than everything else. But you can swap the nibs between the Go and the Eco. Same nib setup there. So that's something, if you wanted to like pull it out of both, which you would need to. So that's a thing. I'm just going to get all my pens mixed up. TWSBI Swipe. Why not? Let's get into that one. Swipe also fixed, not a removable grip. I can pull the body off of it, but it's, again, same kind of thing. You would have to pull the nib and feed out, but hey, look at that. You have a number 4. So you can swap the nib feed itself if you want between these and the Eco, the Eco, Swipe, and Go. So that is an option, but TWSBI does not sell separate nibs for those. You could technically buy a TWSBI Mini or a VAC Mini nib unit to get the smaller nib, and then you could, take it out of the housing and put on these pens if you want. But you're paying $20 or $21 for that. You can get a Go basically for that price. So you can pretty much get a free pen. How about the TWSBI Classic? Everybody forgets about this one. That's a number 4 as well. So you can swap that one. This one does have a separate grip. We did, I think, maybe used to have spare grips of this one, but not a very popular pen. You're probably like, what even is that thing? I think this color has long been discontinued. I don't know. Everybody forgets about the Classic. It's because it doesn't really look like a TWSBI so much. Anyway, what else we got? Mini. So this is the Mini, like not the VAC version, but this is the Mini AL. So you do have that fun little grip. Same nib. So if you did want to swap that, on the Eco, you can, but you got to take it out of the housing and do the whole thing. That's the thing. And let's see here. TWSBI Precision. Why not? Let's throw that in there. This has the number 5. So this is the same as the 580 nib. I don't think that the grips are going to be interchangeable between each other. I'm actually not sure. Possibly. No, it's not going to work great. Especially because there's like an inner cap that's got a seal and all that kind of stuff. But what the heck? I'm curious. Y'all are here watching me do all this craziness anyway. Let's just go along for the ride. I bet it will thread on here because the housing itself will, but the grip is not going to make any sense on this pen. Look at that. It doesn't even like, what a Franken pen. I mean, technically I can write with it, but I'm like totally freewheeling here. It's like the grip is not held in place because the grip on the Precision is a little longer than the 580. So yeah, I guess you could do that. Let me see if I Franken pen my thing. See, it's not going to work because the Precision little grip there is it's too narrow. It literally won't fit onto there. Oh, too bad. That's okay. Everybody forgets about the Precision as well. So no loss there. I may be the first person that's tried to put a 580 ALR grip on a precision. Okay, so forget about that one. And then what else do I have? Last but not least, TWSBI Kai. Let's see about this thing. This has number 5. I believe you could swap this one between your 580. But again, none of these are VAC 700, so that was originally your question, because you like that pen. None of these will swap with a VAC 700. But you can, I mean, a Goulet number 6 nib you can put on there. But again, you're not nib swapping, you're trying to grip swap. You can take the grip off of the Kai, but you're going to run in the same situation. You're gonna not have a grip that like aligns with anything else. There's no way this is going to fit on here, but I am curious now. Since I'm already in swapping mode, yeah, see, it's just not going to fit in there. Like the spacing inside this grip here is not as big, so like literally the plastic won't fit in there. So TWSBI did not make all of these to be totally interoperable with each other across models, which makes sense. It's what I would have expected, but you know, the nibs themselves, yeah, okay, they're gonna have some economies of scale and share those, and so you can swap just the nibs between them if you want, but grips, nope. Grips do not swap in any fashion between any of the models. Just to flex. TWSBI Micarta. There's an oldie but goodie. They did not make, I think they made 100 of these total. And I grabbed one because I have a problem. This grip is totally different in so many ways. I mean, just look at that thing. It obviously is such a different pen from everything else here, but you know, just because I can show it, I thought I would show it. It's like a linen material. If you know anything about Micarta, they use it for like knife handles and stuff a lot. Anyway, yeah, TWSBI did this once. It's become like mythological at this point, but there's one. Anyway, that's what I got. All right, this is from Powell Niska. If the nib sizes are not exactly the same from different manufacturers, for example, size number 6 nib might be different length for Pilot and Pelican, maybe it would be a better idea to describe them with millimeters and inches, so not having like the number 5, number 6 kind of a thing. I understand that nib size refers to the width of the nib, but I'm personally always more interested in length, and that is never mentioned in the pen's description. What is your take on this? All right, a little bit of nuance here. So nib size can mean different things. If you're talking like the physical overall size of a nib, yes, you can be talking like number 5, number 6, whatever. Those are the more common ones, number 6 being the most common. But nib size can also mean fine, medium, broad, like tip grind size. That is also commonly talked to, just, you know, so those of you newer to the hobby and you're getting confused by all the lingo online, I believe what the question we're referring to here is like the physical overall size of the nib has nothing to do with the tip grind size that it is, or the line width that it's going to put down. We're talking overall size of nib. If you just watch the last question with the different TWSBIs, that's what I was talking about. Like, so physically different size nib between like the Eco 580, VAC 700, right? What's my take on all this? So yeah, the whole number 5, number 6, number whatever thing, it's confusing as heck. I've been in this industry 15 years. It still confuses me. It's not super, super standard. It is pretty frustrating for me, and it's pretty frustrating for you all, especially because you don't know the heck they're talking about with all this stuff. And it's not so much of a standard thing as it seems like it should be. There's no governing body that says this is what, you know, how it should all work. Nope. It's pretty much just Wild West, and there's some adopted somewhat of standards, but it's just like a standard international converter. Okay, there's somewhat of a standard, but nobody's like enforcing that. So there's different types of standard internationals, and some of them work better than others, and it's not exactly always standard. So this is another one I thought might be good to pull out a few pens, show you what's going on here. But it looks to me like you are more concerned about length of the nib. Like how long, how big the nib is, not so much how wide it is, right? All of these things get thrown in the mix when you're talking about number 4, number 5, number 6, 8, you know, number 2, whatever it might be. It does get kind of confusing. So let me pull out my little phone again, and I'll show you a few different nibs, a few different things, and I'll probably thoroughly confuse you and make you frustrated. But before I get into all that, what I do want to say is if what you're actually looking at is purely just the length of the nib from where it comes out of the grip of the pen, right? So the part you can see basically, if that is your concern right there, we have all those measurements. It's not always in the description because we do not get any of these from the manufacturer. We measure all of them. So if you look under technical specs, you can see on any product page of any pen, we measure that dimension. It's called nib length or length-nib. We measure all of those and we give it to you in millimeters and inches. So we're looking out for you because we know it's important to some of you. Also, we have a tool called the Pen Plaza. We show all of the pens in a standard photographed format that they can all be aligned right at the grip. So if you look at the open or posted version of any of these pens, you can put like side-by-side images of them and you can get more of a comparative kind of view of the length of the nib, just in case you're looking between different product pages and you're like, okay, this one says it's like 32 millimeters and the other one's 27. How much of a difference does that actually make? I'm not sure. You can actually pull up the pens with the pictures and see how big of a difference that makes. Especially helpful if you already have an existing pen and you're trying to compare it to or get something at least that big or whatever. That's really helpful. So that's part of answering your question there is we've done that. That is not a standard thing that we get from anybody. Other people may take our dimensions and put them on their website. Okay, that's fine. We can't copyright a dimension. But just know that we are doing that for every single pen that we carry because we know that that matters. You know, we do a lot of different measurement dimensions for all of our pens. So it is a step in our process for every new pen that we get in, and it takes time, and we had to standardize it all, and it's a whole thing. Let me pull out a few pens and show you what's going on. All right, so I got a couple of different pens. I got some calipers here that we can measure stuff. I grabbed an Eco because I thought this one would be a good one to kind of demonstrate. Of course, it's hard to see because this one's black, but you can see here, like when we're talking about the length of nib, when we are doing the measurement on our site, we're doing the length that you can see. So it's just from the grip to up here. So what we will do is we will take the calipers and we will go, I'm just doing it kind of quick and dirty here, but just literally from the end of the grip to the tip of the nib. You know, on this one in particular, that's not right. There we go. Let me zero that out. I was like, that's not 2 millimeters. Okay. Let's see here. Again, don't hold me to this, but you know, roughly 18.5 millimeters, right? So that's a thing. That's a measurement to consider. Whereas if I'm doing the VAC 700R, it is longer. Surprise, surprise. So this one, I'm looking more like 24-ish millimeters, 18.5 versus 24. Pretty significant difference. You know, you can pull that up in the Pen Plaza and be like, oh, okay, I get a sense of the size of that. So those are just like helpful tools that we've developed. It's a little bit of work to do. I know, I don't know the better way to present it, but that is at least gives you some idea. Now, if you are trying to swap nibs and trying to do all that, I will say the dimensions get far more complicated. And it's not super, super standardized. Now, somebody's manufacturing these nibs, and there is standards to how they're made because they have to make them to specific specifications to fit all these different pens. But what we don't know most of the time is all these extra dimensions, right? So we don't know the curvature of the nib, you know, for example, like let's pull this out. Okay, so here's my TWSBI VAC 700 kyanite. Here's the feed and all that, cool. Nib, let's just look at nib, right? So what do you have going on with the nib? Well, you know, like you mentioned in your question, you know, number 6, why is it called a number 6? Well, that's because if you look at the base here, where it's, you know, kind of curled up there, if I measure it at that base, this may not be hyper precise, but it's going to be around 6 millimeters, right? So, or close to there, 6 millimeters. I don't know if technically it has to do with like the inside of it or whatever, but either way, you're looking right around 6 millimeters. Let's pull out another one, 580. It's got a number 5 nib, okay? Pull that thing out. Okay. Looking at the overall size of these nibs. Boom. Number 6 is, guess what, bigger than number 5. Pretty significantly too. But this is called a number 5 because if you look at the base of it, you're looking closer to 5 millimeters. How about that? Now this is where it gets weird, right? Let's go with the Eco. The Eco has number 4 millimeter, or sorry, number 4 nib. So by this logic, you would think it should be 4 millimeters, right? Let's see what it is. 5.25. It's the same. It's the same as the number 5, right? In width, but it's not the same size and curvature and all that stuff. This is where it gets really confusing and it makes it frustrating if you're trying to interchange between them. So different brands, call them different things. No, it's, you know, this is referred to as number 5. And yes, it does have that number 5 thing, but this is called a number 4 and it's not 4 millimeter here. You know, it's like, so if I took a number 4 nib here and tried to put it on a number 5 pen, because it's going to be shallower and all that, it's not really going to fit properly on here. Same thing if I put this on the Eco, it's not going to fit. So it does get really confusing. And then when you look at other pens, like let's go with a Kaweco. I don't know what nib size this one is called. I believe that I'd heard it referred to as a number 2 for a long time. That would mean that it's a 2 millimeter bottom. No, that would be ridiculous. What's the width of this one? Okay, so pretty similar to a number 5 and a number 4, but let's look at a number 5. So this is our 580 nib. There's our little Kaweco. Look at that little guy. So the width is the same at the base, but there's all kinds of other dimensions that are different. Here's our Eco, which is also slightly different. So they're all 5 millimeters at the bottom, but the curvature is different. The overall size, the width of the nib as it flares up gets different. The thickness of the metal could be different. There's all kinds of other dimensions going on, which are going to complicate things for us and make it so that they're not very easily interchangeable with each other. Now, can you hack some of them? Can you force them on there and make them to fit? Maybe. But it gets super duper duper confusing. And especially when you're going across brands, because different brands may very well just like adapt things. They may start with a base of a particular nib size, type, designation, whatever, and then tweak it or adjust it to fit whatever the pen is that they're working with. And we as the end users just kind of get what we get. And it's the kind of thing that, like, unless one brand within their brand even is trying to standardize and make it super, super standard, interchangeability is not going to be easy to do. And especially when you're talking across brands, all bets are off. So when you're getting into nib swapping and sizes of nibs and stuff like that, that wasn't really the nature of your question, but I do get asked this so much. You're in basically in total experimental territory, which is why I think we get asked about it so much, is because nobody really knows most of this stuff. It gets kind of confusing. And unless you're like, have just like all kinds of pens in your collection and you can just swap them in and out and all that, you know, we end up walking a really fine line here doing that stuff, because swapping nibs between brands and all this, you're avoiding warranties when you're doing all this stuff. So I'm showing you all this. These are my pens, you know, so it's fine, whatever I want to do with them. But just know that you're on your own when you're doing this stuff. Like if you go shoving nibs into different pens and all this, and then you have any kind of problems, whatever, that's going to be viewed as like you're hacking your pen. You are adapting it, changing it from what the manufacturer intended. So it does put me as a authorized retailer in an interesting place, trying to standardize and promote like all these types of things with basically hacks. So I just have to kind of disclaim that a little bit. That's also why you don't see a whole ton of retailers putting like this kind of stuff out there. For one, it's confusing and hard to talk about when it's not standardized. And also it then, you know, anybody that is doing that could very quickly get into a place where they're having issues with the pens, and then the manufacturers are not going to be thrilled about authorized retailers telling people how to hack their stuff. And if they mess it up, who's reliable for that? You know, you are as the end consumer, FYI, but you know, yeah, so just you kind of tread there. But hopefully the nature of your question initially was really about the length of the nib that's shown or exposed, in which case we have options for that. We have the tech specs, and then we have the pen plaza that you can see it. So hopefully those are all helpful to you. Hopefully I got to show you at least maybe why some of the nibs get so confusing so quickly. But I don't know. I'm a tinkerer. I still think it's pretty fun. But it does, that's why you can't just like swap one nib very easily between another. Cool. All right, last question for this week. Jeff Getz says, default nib size or grind for everyday use? I don't know. Oh, I actually have one more question after that. I lied. Okay. Well, we'll go through this one pretty quickly. The default nib for a long time in the US at least, and I know for a lot of Europe, is medium. Typically, if you see a fountain pen that only has one nib size option, which we've worked for 15 years to be like, stop doing that, make more nibs. A lot of manufacturers are doing that now. But typically if you go to like a, big box store or, something like that, and they have like a, kind of blister packed, pen with cartridges in it, and it's, calligraphy set or whatever. The default will probably be a medium nib. However, it really should be a fine. I was just curious. So I was looking at the popularity of different nib sizes will ebb and flow over time, but I usually like to lean towards a fine. I'd say most people should get fines. I find that is the most versatile for the type of paper that you're usually going to run into, especially if you're in the US. We don't have the best paper. We have a lot of inkjet printers, which are inkjet paper is more absorbent. If you have laser printer paper, that's always better. And so you're going to run into more bleeding, more, ink spreading and stuff like that. So when you get into the mediums and the broads, you'll get a lot of color, but it can look, you get that fuzzy caterpillar kind of look. The lines can look really wide, depending on the paper. And it's just not going to be as, maybe universal or desirable. So, extra fines, you can definitely go with those, but those, especially if you have a paper that's not very smooth, can feel very toothy and grabby and stuff like that. So I find that fines are the best option for, balancing out that line width with, like a thinner line width with also just feeling comfortable while it writes. And you all agree because, I looked I pulled some numbers for 2024. I broke it down into extra fine, fine, medium, broad, and stub. Now there's flexes and stuff in there. I rolled some things up, whatever. That's not the most important thing. We're kind of just generalizing a little bit, but the most popular nib size of pen that we sell is a fine. It's about a third of all the pens that we sell are fine nibs. So, it's not everything, but that's a lot. It is the most popular nib size. And I think, kind of for the reasons I've explained, and also because, some pens are only available in like maybe a fine and medium. And so it's like, if there's not an extra fine, well, fine is going to be more the default. If every pen had every nib size option, I would be curious to see which one would sell the best. But of course, that's not practical for every brand. The next most popular is medium. Again, is that because of availability, or is that because it genuinely is more popular? You would think maybe extra fine would be the next one more popular, but no, it's medium. So medium is not super, super far behind fine, but fine is pretty definitively number one. The third is extra fine. So it goes fine, then medium, then extra fine, and then everything else distant behind all those. You get into your fine mediums. There's not a lot of pens that have fine mediums, so that's probably part of it. Broads, stubs, not nearly as popular. We're talking like a fraction of all these other ones. So, when I really say like, oh, fine or medium is a good way to go, that is more than half the pens that that are going out the door here are fines and mediums. So it's a pretty safe bet that that's what, somebody's going to enjoy. So, I would pretty easily say, and the data here would back me up, that fine nib is kind of the best all around for a default nib size, for everyday use. But I would love to hear y'all's opinions about it in the comments. You tell me. Of course, we all have ones that we personally will like differently, and you can get into custom grinds and all kinds of stuff. But again, as a default, I would say fine. And last question for the week. This is from Carmen CT Plans. Are black-coated nibs better than non-coated nibs? Well, they're better at being black. I don't know what necessarily you mean by better. I mean, more protected, I guess. There's a protective coating on them, but that doesn't really matter. Like, are you worried about micro scratches and stuff on a stainless steel nib? Or maybe gold, I guess. The truth is, most of the black coatings that you have, it changes the color. It's the appearance. It doesn't change anything else significantly about the nib. So it's a total wash. It's really it's just purely aesthetic. So I did a little bit of diving here. Most of the time, I mean, there are different ways that you can get black nibs. The ones that I know have been typical on different nibs with different brands. The coating is either going to be done by like an electroplating process, which is, dipped in a bath solution, charged with electricity. And then the particles of the, whatever the coating is going to like attract to the metal that's on the nibs and bond to it in a very, very thin layer. And there's different things that can be used and as the coating itself, but it's a very thin coating. It will not change the feel of the nib, the flexibility, any of that kind of stuff. All it's changing is the appearance. So it's just you want it black or not. There's one called PVD, physical vapor deposition. This is more of like it's not done in a bath. This is more of like it's done in a vacuum with, I think, like the air itself inside this vacuum has some kind of electrical charge or something to it. I don't quite understand the science. And then there's like essentially atomized whatever the material is that is used for the PVD. PVD is more durable than electroplating coating, I believe. And then there's chemical blackening, which is essentially like, purposefully kind of oxidizing the nib, which is known as black oxide. That is another method that's kind of done. The results kind of look similar. Usually if you see like a ruthenium plated nib, that's like the gunmetal type look, that's usually going to be an electroplating. But the rest of them, PVD and black oxide, they're going to look like very black. Those are slightly more durable, I think, but they're all pretty durable. And again, doesn't change the base metal underneath. You can do it on gold. You can do it on steel. You can do it on titanium if you want. So doesn't change anything about the properties. So the question is, no, they're not better unless you like black nibs. And then yes, they're better. So yeah, how it's done, the specific methods, all it does is matter in terms of like the scratch resistance and the wear resistance of the black material itself. But in terms of performance on a nib, no difference. All right. Well, I am running long, but I don't know. Time just got away from me on this one. Let's talk about some of my crazy adventures. And then I do have an interesting fact for you. So, I was gone for 2 weeks. I had my in-laws down for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is like a whole thing in Rachel's family. She's got like recipes for like turkey, and you cook the stuffing in the turkey and you make, gravy out of the turkey liver and all this kind of stuff. And it's like a whole thing. It's like 5th generation now, because it was her great grandmother that started the recipe for some of these things. And now with my kids' generation, that's 5 generations spanning. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It's a lot of work because anything you do for 5 generations the same way is like, oh, things are easier now in most of our life than it was 5 generations ago. But it's also like a family thing. We do it together. We sort of pass the torch. My brother-in-law and I do the turkey and, do the whole thing. And it's this whole process. But we look forward to it. The smells that are happening in the house are just magnificent. And, our kids are being raised in it now. And it's like, okay, well, we're kind of locking this in now for the next generation, aren't we? So we did that. It was great. We had a good visit, and, they were with us for like a week, and, it really worked out. So it's kind of thing like, yes, when you're with your in-laws, your family, for a week, many people would think, boy, that could get treacherous, but no, actually I have a really, really good relationship, with Rachel's family. She has a good relationship with my family. So that works out well. So consider myself very fortunate that we do not have a lot of drama in the family around the holidays, because I fully recognize that is a very real part of probably most of your lives. So that ends up working out pretty well. But of course, we all have our quirks, right? But yeah, so that was kind of cool. The one thing that we did, so again, this has been a multi-generational thing. This particular thing that we've been doing has been like 40 plus years of cooking stuff the same way. Rachel and I, we were responsible for buying the turkey, and we were just a little bit late on the uptake. Normally we get a frozen turkey. We did not get a frozen turkey in time to thaw it properly in time for the size that we needed, because it's like a very specific size we have to get. So we had to get creative. We went fresh turkey this year instead of a frozen one. The options were slightly more limited. It was a little more expensive, stuff like that, but we'd never done a fresh turkey, and it was like, are we going to end up screwing up this whole thing? I hope not. And actually it was a slightly smaller turkey, so it was a bit of a gamble, but we always end up with so much turkey. Essentially, the turkey is like a stuffing vehicle for us. We just want to cook the stuffing in the turkey as much as we can. We just want the room in the turkey. So we usually end up with like way more turkey than we would naturally want to eat on its own. But the slightly smaller fresh turkey actually worked out quite well. It was juicier. It was, cooked really well. It was faster to cook. So I don't know. We might roll the dice and try a fresh turkey again next year. I don't know. We could have accidentally discovered something that just made it even a little bit better for us. So that was kind of a thing. And then, just doing family activities and stuff. We had lots of work stuff going on, but Rachel and I pre-planned a lot of our stuff, so we had a little more time off last week. Let's see here. Found a yellow jacket nest that I had to neutralize, which I did dramatically. Did not get stung. I have, knock on everything, have not had like a big stinging incident with yellow jackets this year. That has been a theme for me many times in previous years, but I think I might have avoided most of it. It's December now, so it's getting pretty darn cold. So I think that we might be past it all, but we had a warm spell and they were out and found a nest, and it was actually my daughter that found it because we were blowing leaves. She noticed the nest, pointed it out to me, and I was like, good eye, don't go near that. Went back at night, took care of it, and not an issue now. So that's cool. Did some trail clearing and stuff like that with my in-laws as well. Did some woodworking, played a lot of family games and stuff like that. Just spent plenty of time chilling, doing more Stardew Valley as well, because I've been talking about that a lot. Got Rachel into it as well. So now her and I are both doing it together, and her sister as well. So we're all having a good time. Rachel saw Wicked. I have not seen it, but she saw it, said it was great. And then we went to a botanical garden. So in Richmond here, we have something called the Louis Ginter Botanical Garden, and they have this whole lights festival thing. It's over 1 million lights that they do on all the trees and all the everything. It's really cool. And took the kids and in-laws and everything there. And it was great. Yeah, we're there for like an hour and a half. It was very beautiful. If you've never seen it or done anything like that, it's kind of cool. I'll have some pictures and stuff, but if you are in the area at all, go check it out. It's pretty neat. That's my adventures that I've been up to. I could elaborate more on certain things, but it's fine. We're good. So we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up, and then I got a fun fact for you. Well, thank you for watching this week. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a break, and hope you enjoyed this episode and then the next two that are going to be coming before another break. Leave me some feedback. Let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Ask me future questions. I need more questions always for this show. So be sure to ask those in the comments here. Check those out and answer them. Check out gouletpens.com. That's our site. You can buy stuff. And subscribe to our stuff so you can see more of it. My fun fact for the week. Okay, right? So Thanksgiving happened. That's like over and done with now. And now it's just like holidays, especially like Christmas stuff everywhere. So I'm transitioning into that for my fun facts here. So now that Thanksgiving's passed, it's pretty much all systems go for the winter holidays, with Santa Claus being a central figure. Most of us today recognize Santa Claus in his red and white suit and can remember that as far back, as we can, even probably our parents, maybe even grandparents, as far back as they can remember. Santa Claus's origin is pretty complex and kind of interesting. I'll touch on it just a little bit here, at least in terms of how we know him here in the US, and then obviously through pop culture and stuff many other parts of the world. It is interesting how like local customs and stuff vary quite a bit, which is cool. If you have any interesting stories about, your Santa Claus type figure or just holidays in general, I would love to hear that in the comments. That's kind of cool. But at least here in the U.S., St. Nicholas, was a 4th century bishop from Myra, which is like modern day Turkey, known for generosity and gift giving. Would put, gifts in people's shoes and stockings and stuff like that, kind of anonymously, often depicted in bishop's robes. So definitely not the Santa Claus figure that we know now, but that's kind of like the origin of the nature, right? British settlers brought their Father Christmas, and then the Dutch settlers, brought their idea of Sinterklaas to America early on, who would give gifts, kind of more specifically to children. So, the story kind of evolved a little bit there. And then Clement Clark Moore's 1823 poem known as A Visit from St. Nicholas, or as you may more commonly know, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, helped shape the modern image of that fat, jolly Santa in the sleigh pulled by reindeer visiting people's houses. And then Thomas Nast's illustration in the mid to late 1800s showed Santa living at the North Pole with the elf workshop and the red suit, the white trim, and introduced the naughty or nice list. So you see some evolution happening there. And then, there were lots of different depictions, of Santa around that time, and then in the 1930s, that's when things really kind of solidified because Coca-Cola, the drink company, revived those depictions kind of from Nast's illustrations, adapted them, and revived some of those early depictions with the red and white outfitted Santa for their marketing campaigns that were illustrated by Head and Sundblom, which was in line with their like whole vibe. They were going for like a joyful, generous, kind of magical image, right, of Coca-Cola that they wanted for that time. And that image of Santa with the red and the white matched their branding. So it was very natural. And they started promoting Santa around that time of Santa drinking the Coca-Cola, which they still use that today, like 100 years later, which is crazy. And then, you had Macy's, like the department stores, it's like you see like modern, like corporate marketing starting to really take hold, and the whole commercialization of Christmas, which you could debate all kinds of things about, but for better or worse, that's what helped to lock in kind of the image that we now know. Macy's had the Santa in their Macy's Day Parade. They would have Santas with the red and the white and the beard and the whole thing, like in their stores, like especially in New York City. And then, kind of evolving off of that too, Montgomery Ward, another department store, they introduced Rudolph as a part of their own marketing campaign. So in 1939, Robert L. May, who was a copywriter for Montgomery Ward, basically just made up that whole Rudolph story. Part of it was inspired by a poem, but, really incorporated that Rudolph idea, building on the whole Santa thing as a promotional giveaway for kids at that time. It was kind of like a side thing. It wasn't even the core thing, but, his brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, as part of the campaign too, wrote that Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer song for the Montgomery Ward. And then, that was then recorded in like the late 40s. With the version that we know it today, and it just like caught on, and then through the kind of repetitive corporate promotion, all that kind of stuff, really started to lock in all the versions of Santa and Rudolph and all that kind of stuff. And so I don't know, I found it kind of interesting. It's like some of it was like partly made up, some of it was like inspired by various aspects of lore and culture, and America being like a melting pot that it kind of is. Stuff kind of gets all mixed in there, and then you throw a big dash of corporate capitalism on top of it, and that really helps to, promote it out to the world. So for better or worse, I'm not trying to make any kind of big statement about that, but I did think it was kind of interesting just hearing kind of the origin story of just like where some of these images come from. So I don't know, that was my little rabbit hole I fell down. Hope you all enjoyed that with me, but yeah, hope you have a wonderful week. Stay warm, and I'll catch you on the next one. Right on.